have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
Traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion, over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Flag could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Good evening, everybody. This is Smiles Lewis, and this is Anomaly-NOW, live from Austin, Texas, on this Wednesday, February 15th, 2023 date. And I am here with...
Hey, everybody.
Mark. How you doing,
Glad
man?
to be here. Good, Smiles. How are you, man?
Well, I'm going to rant for a little bit.
Please do. It's been a long couple of weeks here in Austin. I don't know if anybody's tracking, but there's a lot to rant and rave about.
So last week I ranted a little bit about, how we missed a show because of the Arctic blast and how that took us off the airwaves, so to speak. Took the power out of our sails. But this week, today was one of those days. It's quintessentially Austin experience of just how difficult it can be to just try to get home from work some days, where you look at the traffic map and you're like, well, I'm going to go a different way because the normal way is terrible. It looks like it's heavy traffic. And then it literally becomes a situation where no matter which way you try to go, you're thwarted by yet more bad traffic and construction. And I swear it was madness. We had to change directions 3 or 4 times. People getting very aggravated and thus making dangerous decisions. And also the whole time, by the end of the trip, I thought I was constantly hearing emergency vehicle sirens because, in fact, there were we saw multiple emergency vehicles, fire trucks, mostly ambulances, some fire department, trying to get by through this traffic. You feel for those folks trying to get through to help people. And then I also almost saw 2 pedestrians nearly struck by one of these ambulances. So, but hey, now I'm home and can enjoy tasty beverages and a cool glass of water. Well, what a weird week. Last week, I went on and on about all the history in the UFO field regarding balloons because, well, there was this Chinese spy balloon, alleged Chinese surveillance balloon that ultimately was shot down off the East Coast. And, I went into a long discussion about all the different things in ufological history related to balloons, just to give people a taste of things that they may or may not have known already. Boy, did I not have my money on, we're going to suddenly reverse course and start shooting everything out of the sky. And I've joked with several people that this weekend, Sunday, my Super Bowl Sunday was watching live footage of people trying to track what the hell was going on with regard to these shoot downs, because it really seemed crazy. 3 objects in 3 days after this Chinese surveillance balloon. And, there's so much speculation, so much uncertainty. And are these really, unidentified? I mean, they are obviously unidentified, at least to the best of our knowledge, but are they really part of the UFO phenomenon? And I think you and I are probably in agreement, and we'll get to this a little bit more, but I had just recently, we finally got that long overdue UAP report. And sure enough, The ODNI preliminary assessment on UAP discussed 144 UAP reports and had information cutoff date of blah, blah, blah. They went ahead and added more reports. And then when they broke them down, sure enough, as you can see highlighted here, 163 categorized as balloon or balloon-like entities. So with that as kind of the background setting for this recent spat, it doesn't really surprise us, or it shouldn't, that this weird craziness would ensue. But there's been with each sighting and each shoot down, it just escalated in terms of like, what WTF, man, what is going on? This is just so bizarre. And we're, each trying to get, information and see if there's any official reports on this or that sighting and takedown. And then it just started snowballing. And then literally I was seeing people online like, oh, which one are you, people are talking about the latest shoot down. And they're like, the other people trying to catch up are referencing the previous shoot down. So, what we seem to have here is a case of an itchy trigger finger. Maybe there's some, political impetus here, obviously, because there was so much criticism of the Biden administration for not having done more quickly. I think I mentioned last week that there's been all this political football back and forth about, oh, well, wait a minute, there were these were, flying over during the previous administration and they didn't shoot any of those down, let alone tell anybody about it. But, part of the main point of last week's show was civilian witnesses were actually very important in the, maybe not the discovery of it, but the public revelation and the reporting on it that led to the official acknowledgement and finally doing something about it. There's so many things to unpack here, but as I've said, I do feel like this is kind of a distraction from what the Anomaly Archives is about, is preserving and educating the public about anomalous phenomena, a wide range of anomalous phenomena, things that science has difficulty with accepting or even investigating without succumbing to laughter, curtain, ridicule factor kind of approach. But and certainly this has really generated an amazing amount of media attention and more use of the word UFO, an unidentified object, and unidentified flying objects by the mainstream media than has happened in a long time, especially in the face of the rebranding of these things as UAP. So in that sense, I'm very happy that, again, it's reigniting the dialogue, the public discourse. But again, it's yet again, just like this post 2017 onward government revelations, everything's couched in terms of threats. And certainly, obviously, any sovereign country wants to ensure the safety of its citizens and the security of its aerospace. So in some ways, I'm not surprised by this. Mark, I mean,
I think what I would add is that the way this thing is developed for me last week here is that, at least in my mind, there's become a clear schism between the term UFO and UAP. At this point, the military, the media, and all the talking heads are starting to associate, technologies, drones, and all those sort of things more in that UAP camp. And like you're saying, in the preservation of the intent of the archives, these do not align, frankly, very well, if not at all, with the traditional UFO sort of umbrella and all the phenomena that we used to traditionally think about under that. So for me, in terms of the way the media and the government is driving this, I just see this very, clear schism that the UAP is going to be a technologically military-driven sort of term for funding, et cetera. And then, we will operate as we have, to deal with what I will continue to call the UFO phenomena. There's Tyler Rogaway at the War Zone wrote a great article. It's too much to get into here tonight. if anybody's interested, there's a link that Miles has on the website here. But you can go into this where there's some very prominent people within the military, Ryan Graves, and I think Miles can pull up some information about him. But this term UAP is strongly now, after these events, being very associated with not familiar technologies, i.e. unidentified aerial phenomena, but not so what the U.S. has done in the past. So we got to be careful as we move forward that, we discern the fact that, people are going to throw around this new phrase of UAP with something that could probably more be categorized with a domestic / government military, technology than what we've talked about for years and years and years, which is obviously the intent of the archives. So,
well, and I do want to stress, I have been very much a supporter of organizations such as NARCAP in the past, National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena. This is their website here. They were formed many years ago as a way of showing the importance to the issue of aviation safety from an aviation enthusiast. And so in some ways I felt like, okay, there's not really been anything new again with so much of what's rolled out since 2017 and the revelations about ATIPs, aka OSAP, or OSAP, aka ATIP. But you mentioned Ryan Graves, and yeah, I was telling you about how he's leading the formation of this new group over at the AIAA, American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and the creation of a Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Integration and Outreach Committee. This AIAA group is massive, tens of thousands of members worldwide, and is similarly, again, about aeronautics and astronautics. And for a military pilot who obviously is now part of this new campaign to gain legitimacy for the subject of UFO, UAP, to have accomplished this is something significant. But yeah, as you say, I think that this is very different than what I consider the true UFO phenomenon. I would call this is all the UFO, FAUX, false UFO phenomena. Anytime, I mean, obviously,
yep.
I mean, I'm kind of by even saying that, I'm kind of giving into the idea of the whole idea of why UAP was created was to because there's this sense that UFO means alien spacecraft to most people. And I'm saying, well, UFO to me means a group of phenomena that are related to people's belief in alien others and their belief that there's some kind of consciousness or intelligence behind these objects or apparitions or whatever they are, these anomalous phenomena that are often aerial, but that sometimes are transmedium, as the current phraseology asserts. But yeah, it's been really a wild ride watching how all this stuff has emerged, and I just feel like I really actually this clip of Senator Kennedy after he and the other senators got their secret briefing, where he's been quoted as saying, "If you are confused, you understand the situation perfectly." But it all in that same clip, one reporter asked Kennedy whether this is a wagging of the dog situation, the idea that it's somehow like that the shooting down of these other mystery objects was a way of bolstering the Biden administration's response to the violation of our airspace after he was so criticized for waiting so long for the shoot down of the more seemingly known about Chinese surveillance balloon.
But Miles, do these other successively three objects, nobody knows what they were. Nobody's calling them balloons. They're just supposed objects that supposedly got shot down over airspaces based on supposed, waveform or radar evidence, et cetera, and craft being recovered. But as far as I know, these aren't balloons, and nobody actually knows if anything was actually shot down. There was just some activity of deployment of military assets, et cetera. Correct?
Well, I'm not aware of there being witnesses on the ground, civilian witnesses,
nor I.
like
right.
with the China balloon. And they keep saying that these were in remote locations, and certainly northern Alaska and the Yukon even more so, and then over Lake Huron, one of the largest lakes in the world, right? But again, it's on all levels. It's an amazing situation, unprecedented seemingly, with the coordination of the Canadian government allowing it. The Yukon, of course, not being any stranger to famous UFO cases. I'll try to put some links to famous UFO cases in the show notes. Actually, there was this one article that's not related to the recent case, but I definitely thought was worth noting, in that the writer talks about how he was writing something for like the in-flight insert of aviation, and it was going to be about UFOs, but the people, the company didn't want it to be written as nonfiction or to consider them unknowns, because they were afraid it would scare the passengers who might be reading this in the plane. And this was before all this. This was years ago. So that's kind of an interesting anecdote, but it's pretty wild. And I do think there's a lot of information. Well, as far as like what we've heard about witness testimony, the military witness testimony have said that that one of the objects was the size of a car, supposedly. Another one mentioned cylindrical shape. Another one mentioned like a possible metallic balloon. So yeah, there's at least the hints of some witness testimony as to visual sightings beyond just, as you say, sensor and radar data. We do also, we'll put a link to the clip of the alleged radio chatter amongst the pilots for the Lake Huron incident. That's pretty interesting. And then there's this one, I think there's one or two reports of, I think it's the Yukon case, maybe it's the Alaska case. Again, these all blur together over the course of 3 days. But one of there are reports that some pilots, I think this was, I think, the New York Times had said that there were reports from a pilot that the object interfered with their sensors. Now, that's definitely more UFO-like, but again, now they're saying that they were able to jam the Chinese surveillance balloon's communications so that it couldn't communicate what it was sucking up back to China, allegedly. Yeah. Again, we always only have these military officials unless there's corroboration from some other source. It's really hard to know for sure what exactly is going on. And it's certainly, it's strangely resonant with a lot of other themes. There's this AP Strange is a writer who I like. He's got a website, apstrange.com. And he's got this article from a few days ago, so it predates so much of this, but full of hot air, ruminations on UFOs and those numinous balloons. And this is, I would describe this as a more synchromistic article, in the sense that he's talking about the symbolism of this, but as it relates to fiction. And so he gets into things like Batman movies and the symbolism of balloons in Batman movies, and of course Stephen King's It. Even going so far as to show the Hindenburg cover from the Led Zeppelin album, and even going into the Pink Floyd pig balloon that got loose back in the day when they were shooting the cover for the Animals album in the 70s. But it's an interesting foray into, as I say, the synchromistic approach
That's
approach
awesome.
to this.
Yeah.
And of course, he ends with the whole idea of balloons in the climax to Wizard of Oz and taking you back to your own world after you've been venturing down a rabbit hole.
That's great. That's great. That's great.
And of course, several other people have been pointing out, and so CNN has this: after a train derailment, Ohio residents are living the plot of a movie they helped make. And in this article, the writer interviews some folks, this family who were extras in this Netflix movie that you can see streaming right now called White Noise, that deals with a truck hitting a train and causing a train derailment of extremely hazardous chemicals that then create a what do they call it? There's a phrase that they use in the movie to describe something like an anomalous airborne event, which in and of itself is kind of reminiscent of all these things we're talking about. But this is a terrible tragedy, and honestly, I think it's terrible that this isn't getting more traction in the media, given its potential significance to life in this area of Ohio. But it reminded me and other people of another film that has some strange ideas about UFOs, chemical hazards, and trains, and that, of course, is the classic Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie, where there are significant differences between the theatrical version and the special edition. But there is, of course, the scene where the father is trying to teach his kids fractions by using a train model, but instead there's a train crash, as you can see here with this train derailment image. But there's more to that in the edited version. But as I was reminded when I went looking for information on that movie, I was remembering that from Wikipedia says the United States Army evacuates the area, planting false reports in the media that a train wreck has spilled a toxic nerve gas, all the while preparing a secret landing zone for the UFOs and their occupants. And so again, this train derailment and the threat of chemical spill is part of this. But all of this gets far afield from this particular rash of shoot downs. But we'll get the links to all that in the show notes for this show. But like I said, I think this is a detraction from the more interesting aspects of what I think is the true UFO phenomena, and which I should where is that? How, Victor, how do I show this? There we go. Thank you, Victor. So I was very lucky to recently get copies of Joshua Cutchin's amazing volume, 3-volume series, The Ecology of Souls, A New Mythology of Death and the Paranormal, which I really, if you're not familiar with his work, I've mentioned it before. I'm still making my way through volume 2 of Where the Footprints End, High Strangeness and the Bigfoot Phenomena. This is volume 2. Excellent books. But it's books like that and others like Jeff Kripal's newest book, The Superhumanities, Dr. Stephen Finlay's In and Out of This World: Material and Extraterrestrial Bodies in the Nation of Islam. These are some really significant works in the academic world. And while Joshua Cutchin is not really an academic, his work is of academic quality, and I can't wait to dive in. I've read the introduction and it's phenomenal. It's really awesome. But to me, those get to the real meat of the matter of perhaps what's going on with these phenomena. And it's a discussion that I remember I was saying how you a year or so ago sent me a link to Lou of Unknown Celebrity Review, I think was his show back when he was still doing it. And he was talking to somebody about the efforts to legitimize UAP research, UFO research, and someone was lamenting the same thing that I've lamented, which is, well, absent from all this discussion is the contact experiences, whether they be classic alien abduction or just traditional close encounters of the first, second, third, or higher kind. And he made the argument, and this is why you sent me the link, that no progress has been made by trying to argue that. And while has been some really good work, especially by academics like formerly John Mack with his Harvard credentials, that still didn't change people's minds. And I think it is because we're still such a nation and a society ruled by a belief in the new God, science, and what you can record with sensors. And until there's some kind of better evidence for the reality of what these people's stories tell us has happened to them and to so many people, that's not likely to change soon.
And Miles, that's where I was saying earlier in this conversation, I'm reverting back to a two-party system. I'm not going to replace UFO with UAP. It's been clear to me over the last month that UAP has become a technological, military industrial funding mechanism for whatever, however it suits the chain of command and however they need to, deal with their business. And I'm not saying it's for the greater good. I'm sure it is for the greater good of the United States, et cetera. But for me, there's I called it a schism earlier, and I'm going to stick back to UFO, all the classic things that we referred to with Jacques Vallée and all the stuff that we've really dug into very deeply in the archives is very meticulously curated and caretaked for. In my mind, at least, now we have we have two things going on, and I think there was going to be some overlap between the two of them, but I'm not wholesale exchanging my term of UFO for UAP at this point. Let's put it that way.
Well, God bless you, man. I pretty much feel the same way. I recognize that UAP did exist and was used before this recent campaign by Tom DeLonge and his cadre of bigwigs from the government and the military and the intelligence community. And I think there's definitely something to it. If you're going to use it, I much prefer the A in UAP being anomalous and not aviation. But this is why I keep joking. I love calling UFOs unassimilated, fantastic observations, because they're unassimilated. Once you, as a witness or a seeker, make a decision, you've collapsed the wave on your thought about what the nature of whatever case it is you're looking at is, and then it becomes whatever you think it is. It's no longer a UFO; it's an IFO, and that's what I was getting at with my kind of when I think of the UFO as being about the phenomena and not about just some unidentified. I'm playing into that, but I'm also playing with it, so to speak. But just, briefly, one last thing is, we'll probably post links to some new and old thedrive.com Warzone articles, because I think they do a really good job, because they were an established outlet that was interested in aviation and military technology and cutting edge stuff. They didn't have an interest in UFOs, but I mean, I'm sure some of them probably did as backburner stuff, but that wasn't the point of their site. But they've done some really great reporting on this stuff to help try to provide their expertise. But I find it interesting. They've covered this, of course, current case, and they've even posted some of the jet fighter banter audio for the Lake Huron shoot down, alleged. But they also, from back in April of 2021, did an article with the provocative title that I think is appropriate here: "Adversary drones are spying on the U.S. and the Pentagon acts like they're UFOs."
Yep, that's exactly
right. And I think it may be in that link where they show some different types of drones, because there's just so many, and one of them happens to be cylindrical, which makes me think of one of the latest sightings. And as a little birdie told me, you might remember someone here saying this, Mark, that how do we know these aren't our drones that they're shooting down? Yeah. Our balloons. How would we know?
Got to capture some funding and some attention and some news, and you never know. It could have been antiquated, and we just needed to bring it down because it wasn't serving its purpose anymore.
Indeed.
Fair enough. Smiles.
Well, folks, you can as always, you can go to anomalyarchives.org and find links to past shows and other information. Find out more about our nonprofit 501c3 here in Austin, Texas, the Anomaly Archives Scientific Anomaly Institute. You can also check out our Flipboard, where we post links to all this stuff. Everything that we've been talking about and much, much more is linked there. There's a ton of articles. As always, more than we could ever get into on a half-hour news roundup show, and there's always something interesting going on. And as Mark was lamenting, one of these shows soon we're gonna do some deep diving into the cryptozoological world of Bigfoot. So hopefully you'll stay tuned for that when we get around to that. And
also, folks, remember, for example, there's a board meeting this weekend for the archives. Smiles has done a fantastic job of making progress in getting the archives, a space back where you can interact physically with the books. He was showing the books, obviously on the podcast tonight, but getting your hands on them and doing the research and digging into these chapters is right around the corner for the archives. And this weekend's going to be a big deal for that. So hopefully next week we'll have an update for you guys on how that went. But believe us that in the background, there's a lot of hard work going on, getting the access to these archives available to the public again, which of course is the intent and always the dream and the directive that Smiles has had through all these years. So collectively, we're making a lot of strides moving in that direction now that we've kind of turned the corner after COVID and the latest ice storm. All these little things that chip away at you. But anyway, it's a big deal. We're making headway, and so stay tuned on that. I think a little bit too.
All right, Mark, Victor, stay right there, and
Victor, thank you.
We'll say goodnight, and we'll chat after the show. So, all right, thank y'all for watching and listening. Like, subscribe, smash that notification bell, yada, yada, yada. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.